Hey guys, this is the Cold Steel Recon 1. Bought this knife because of the American Lawman. Now I showed this knife, I talked about it, the American Lawman. I think it's just awesome folder. I don't consider it an EDC for anybody, like I said in my video, but if you're gonna need a knife with a very solid locking mechanism and good steel, I've come to realize, because that was also one of the reasons why I chose this knife, CTS XHP, wanted to see what it was all about. This is a great option. And then I said, wow, cold steel folders, really like them. So I decided on the Finwolf and the Recon 1. I found this on the secondhand market for a very good price. Draw point, I wanted to try out the draw point or spear point blade style. And this one is an S35VN. Now, Cold Steel, to my understanding, is not producing them, the Recon ones in CTS XHP because of lack of material availability. I'm not sure, maybe in the future they will. For what I've seen on the American Lawman, it does a good job. No chips, no problems with the edge. All I did to keep it sharp was drop it. I did use it around the cabin, not so much for EDC because, like I said, hard to get in the pocket and it's not a very play-friendly folder. Now, got this one. I was a bit disappointed. The previous owner did not tell me about it, modified the handle scales. He sanded them down, made them smooth. I wanted that aggressive handle scale experience. So I still said, you know, I'm gonna see what S35VN is all about. Never had that steel before. And I carried the knife. Now, I can tell you, it is a pocket hogger. For me, it's not about the weight of the folder, it's more about the size, the bulk of it. With regular jeans, you can get it in your pocket pretty well. Same issue as with the American Lawman. You're gonna have to put your fingernail under the pocket clip, unless you want to bend the pocket clip. Personally, I don't. And you can get it in your pocket. Now, these are my outdoor pants, and here I can just put my hand in, retrieve my keys, whatever. Big pockets. If you wear regular jeans, you're gonna have to probably shift a bit to get to your keys, and you're gonna feel this in your pocket, not because of the weight, but because of the bulk. Like with the Cold Steel American Lawman, I don't think that the Recon 1 is an EDC for everybody. It is an EDC if you really need something like this. Big, sturdy, stable, triad lock. Yeah, sure, then it's an EDC. For example, I like this knife. I got it as a gift and I like using it. This is the Victorinox 100 Pro. If you're using something like this every day, or as a hunting knife, or as a whatever knife, going to the Recon 1, it's a bit lighter, I think. I'm not sure. I haven't weighed it. I did not weigh it and did not compare it with this one. It's a bit lighter. You have a pocket clip, and S35VN or CTS XHP, it's gonna be better than the soft Victorinox steel. Not all bad with soft Victorinox steel, but that's a different topic. So, pocket hogger, if you use your knife for very heavy duty tasks, if you don't mind the big blade, yes. But if you watch the secondhand knife market, there are a lot of Recon 1s out for sale. And my opinion about this is, a lot of people thought, oh, they're great, YouTubers have only good things to say about the Recon 1. It's a bit big, but might be a great EDC knife. It's a big EDC knife if you want to carry it. And if you don't need it, you're probably gonna leave it at home. I carried this one for 1 week just to see how it does, and I missed my 940. I mean, when you go from something like this to something like this, it's gonna be a big difference. But yeah, luckily I have a friend who insisted that I buy this knife from him, the Cold Steel Recon 1 clip point CTS XHP. I like CTS XHP now, so far. Had no problems with it. And I did want to somehow try the clip point blade. Not a fan of clip point blades. I like the look of a draw point, spear point blade much more. I think it's much more stable. If you're gonna want to dig into wood, I have no issue digging this into wood and prying it with it. But if I do the same with this one, well, surprise, surprise, it's gonna go in much deeper. And I really don't want to bend it that much. It might snap. Heat treatment might be on cue, or it might not be, and you might snap or bend the tip. I did do this, but you know, in a controlled manner. I would say with common sense, things that I would normally do, or maybe a bit harder than I would normally do. I test my knives a bit harder than I would ever use them. And I think that's common sense. If you're gonna rely on one folder or one fixed blade, you should test a bit harder than you will ever use. So I got this one brand new, and surprise, surprise, very aggressive texturing on the G10 handle scales. The opening was much smoother, and the factory edge was amazing. Not as sharp as my American Lawman, but still hair shaving sharp. I did not sharpen this knife. Took it out here twice, cut wood with it, and one time, the first time I took it out here, I carried it in my pocket. And you can see the use on my pocket because I carry a lot of folders. I would say 80% of this is this knife for one outing. Very aggressive. So yes, I can understand why the previous owner modified, sanded down the handle scale, but you don't need to sand down the whole handle scale, only underneath the pocket clip. Some people might feel that this is too aggressive for their hands. For me, in hand, as aggressive as this one is, it just feels right. It feels much better than these smoother handle scales. But I do understand how some people might prefer a smoother handle scale. This just locks my hand in. Now if you're going to use them with gloves, which if you're going to use a folder for an extended duration of time, I do recommend you use a glove. Especially if it's a thinner folder, like the American Lawman. If you're going to use this for an extended period of time, cutting wood shavings or hard cardboard boxes, I do recommend you use a glove. Otherwise, your hands will hate you unless you have those really manly hands. But with gloves, you're not going to feel the difference. You're just going to appreciate the finger grooves. It happens that it fits my hand perfectly. And if I want to choke up on the blade and use it like this, it's much more comfortable than this finger choil on the American Lawman. However, this one has a hollow ground blade, and these two have a flat ground blade. Now you can get the Recon 1 with a clip point in a hollow ground blade, and if you want extra cutting ability, extra cutting performance, extra usability of the tip, you know, I do recommend that one. Now this tip is pretty nice. Where's my stick? My tri-stick here. I don't test, well, I guess I test knives different than regular people would use them, simply because I don't use my knives like normal people do. I do. My EDC knife, last week I had to open up a 12-pack of bottled water, and I pulled out my 940, opened it, cut up the plastic, closed it, put it back in the pocket. That was regular use, and I thought about it and I said, wow, it's really practical. And I do prefer the access lock for EDC because simply my fingers are always out of the way. And that's a different topic, however. But when I test knives, I will take a knife and I will make feather sticks for 5 minutes to see how it feels in my hand. This one is pretty comfortable. I will stab the tip of the knife, see how it feels. And this one goes in fairly deep. The other one I stabbed as hard as I could into the log that I'm sitting, and I had no issues. This is, I think, beech wood, and it just pokes holes in it, and breaks off wood. I will baton some knives. I will not baton my cold steels, simply because I have my Gonzos for that. You can watch the cold steel tests and you will see the warning. This voids the warranty, this voids the warranty, that voids the warranty. Now, making the point about the tip, this tip is pretty good. You know, if you want a tip that'll allow you to do more things, you know, dig into wood, poke a hole in the stick. Clip point. If you want something sturdier, the spear point, draw point version. This will dig in just as well, but you can feel more resistance here because there's more material behind the tip. So I find that one a bit more practical. It may be because of the smooth handle scales that I feel there's a huge difference between these two knives. Although I do remember that I did put them on a scale and the difference was about 3 or 4 grams maybe. But it's probably the smooth handle scales that this one has. They're not smooth, they're not glassy. They're textured, they're okay, but they're nothing compared to this one. And this will smoothen out, but if it does it like the American Lawman, it's all gonna be good because I can still file my fingers on this one. So no issues with that. I did use this one for chopping. Why? Why would you chop with a folder? Well, because you can. Because sometimes you want to break a stick in half and you want to do it relatively clean and you don't want to beaver your way through it, especially with this thick rind. It has a thick rind now. I'm not saying this is a bad slicer. No, it surprised me. This is still the factory edge. It's not as sharp as that one. I just dropped it. With a bit of effort, you can take off some hairs, but it's still nothing compared to an open L. Or for example, my Endura, 20° per side edge angle, thinner behind the edge, it'll do a better job. Big knife, and you can grab it right here and you can chop with it. When chopping with a folder, be very careful. If you're chopping green wood and the knife gets stuck in a piece of wood, you pull it out, the lock disengages, it'll snap closed on your fingers. Be very careful of that. I don't think the triad lock will snap closed, will disengage by accident. However, this is one point I want to make. Something I touched on with the American Lawman is that this back lock is very difficult to disengage. You require a lot of pressure, and with my right hand I can do it 5, 6, 7 times. With my left hand I can do it more times. But for a new knife user, somebody who's not accustomed to it, once or twice might be enough and they will say, hey, my thumb hurts. And I was expecting the same thing with the Recon 1. I was surprised to see it wasn't the case. This one, the new one, you can flick it out fairly easily. The other one I opened and I disassembled, I put back together, and I tightened the pivot screw. This one, no blade play, and I can flick it out without any issues and I can close it very easily. This is not a negative. For some people this is going to be a huge improvement over the American Lawman because this takes much less pressure to disengage. I would have actually preferred if it would have been like the American Lawman, where I would have to use a lot of pressure to disengage the blade, because that gave me the feeling of stability. Do I think that the triad lock will disengage by accident? No. I trust it after having tested it. I don't think you should trust something before you test it. This is my 3rd outing with both knives and my 5th with this one. I have chopped with it. After the last time I chopped with it, when closing it, I heard a really bad screeching noise and it would close really, really hard. So I went home, I disassembled it, cleaned it, I put a drop of oil, although I don't like to do that, and now it's smooth, but I did tighten the pivot, very much so. So it has no blade play, and if you want to flick it out, you really have to give it a wide flick of the wrist, but it's doable. Then you can close it one hand, you have to reposition your hand. That is the nature of most locks, except for compression lock and axis lock. This one being, in my opinion, the most practical of them. And coming back to batoning, things you shouldn't do with a folder, chop or baton. Now I think that if somebody's gonna overbuild a folder, so you can actually destroy a stick out in the woods, I think it's meant to be abused. It's meant to take something that other knives aren't. This is meant to do more than this. Same size, right? This one, thinner blade, convex grind, different locking mechanism. What's the difference? If this one is meant to solely cut, why doesn't it cut as well as this one? With no effort, if I want to get a big bite here, I can put a point on a stick, I can remove material, even through knots. Big chunks of material. Okay, here you go. Now you cannot do that. You can't do this with the Recon 1. Here it goes. You can't do this. Why? Because this is meant to be a utility knife. This is meant to cut. This is not meant to chop. You can try to chop with this one, and you'll get deep bites, but you'll be much quicker to chop through a stick with something like the Recon 1, because you have the weight. As for slicing, here you go. That's what happens. It just breaks the wood fibers apart. That was a nice straight fiber. That was a slicing knife fiber. This is a pry bar fiber. So different usage in mind. This is not supposed to be just a slicer. You should be able to stab this into a piece of wood and dig out a grub or fat wood or whatever. You're supposed to be able to chop with this. You're supposed to be able to baton it. Will I baton it? No. Why not? Well, it makes sense to test your knives for all conditions if you're only going to use one knife. If you're going to have one EDC knife for the rest of your life, which you're going to use for everything. Everyday carry, hiking, hunting, one knife. In that case, I can recommend an axis lock knife. I can recommend a Gonzo, because they're fairly inexpensive, $15, $20. Axis lock. I always have at least one Gonzo with me. Right now, and for the last 2 weeks here, I have the 740. I baton this knife. I've done some chopping with it. It's a good slicer. It can take some abuse, and this one has seen a lot of batoning. The lock sustained some damage. Now, if I grab it like this and push it, I can feel a bit of forward-backward blade play, because the liners are a bit deformed from all the batoning. But that's it. It's still a 100% usable knife. And it's a great slicer. I mean, much better than the Recon 1. Now you can get the Recon 1 to slice as well, mainly because you can change the edge angle. They're both flat ground knives. So yeah, you can get that from the Recon 1. What sets them apart is that if this lock sustains some damage, you get some forward-backward blade play from batoning. If this lock sustains some damage, you might not be able to close or have the knife open in a safe position. That's why I think that access locks are just the best locking mechanisms for folders if you want to really abuse your folder. And I like having a gonzo with me because, you know, when it comes down to it and I need to split a piece of wood and I don't have a fixed blade or a hatchet, I'm gonna use a gonzo. If I break this one, I'm not gonna cry about it. I'm just gonna buy another one. And I keep it in my backpack always. I keep it right here in this little pocket. I try to put it so together so that I can easily get to it should I need to cut up a sausage or peel a potato really quick. And if I lose it, it's just lost, doesn't matter. But I would really hate to lose something like this. So I think they're excellent folders. The price, I would say, is, well, everything is too expensive, but yes, I would pay the new price for a Recon 1 with the steel I want, the blade shape I want, the grind I want. I think they're worth it. As for factory edge, excellent. Other companies could learn a lot from Cold Steel. The American Lawman did change my mind about Cold Steel folders, and if I get one, the Finn Wolf is going to be next on my list. I do not like OS 8 that much. I guess the Finn Wolf is only available in that, but I would like to test it. I do like the Scandi, the 2-bevel ground folders. I have the Berg 75. It is it? And I'd like to try one from Cold Steel. So, in closing, I think it's an excellent folder. I hope the video did not bore you too much. Sorry. Hope the video did not bore you too much. Hope I managed to tell you something that you didn't hear somewhere else. If you have any questions about the Cold Steel Recon 1, post them in the comment section. I'll get to them as soon as possible. I'd like to thank you for watching, and as always, I wish you all a great day.